So this is Devil May Cry 3, and this is actually a great game, unlike Devil May Cry 2. So a lot of people consider this to be their favorite DMC game. Some people even consider this to be one of the greatest games of all time. But as somebody who's playing these games for the first time, this is definitely my favorite thus far. Um, of course, we'll talk more about Lady a little bit later, but the story of this game, it's actually a prequel to Devil May Cry 1 and 2. Dante has just opened a shop. He does not have a name for it yet. That big giant tower in the distance, Virgil's up there. And there's an unknown man that shows up, and he's like, hey, here's a bunch of demons. And then the demons show up, and Dante defeats the demons, and then this big giant tower that you can see off in the distance springs up out of nowhere in the background, and then you find out that, oh, it's probably Virgil's up there. Well, that's what Dante thinks at least. And you find out that Dante has to take down Virgil, the usual stuff. But Virgil and Arkham have formed a bit of a deadly alliance with each other, where they're trying to connect the human world and the demon world, thereby allowing demons to invade the human world. So it's up to Dante to prevent that from happening. But meanwhile, there's an unknown woman that shows up, and she says that she does not have a name, but you learn later on her name is Mary, or Lady, as Dante refers to her. And you find out that she wants revenge on her father for killing her mother. And then you find out that her father's actually Arkham. It becomes quite obvious when you realize that they both have the same colored eyes. It's really cool because Lady has heterochromia, so like her left eye is brown and her right eye is hazel. It's pretty cool. It's like a blue, mostly. It's like hazel, right? So that's cool. Heterochromia is always really cool. But Lady is absolutely my favorite part of this game. I also have her rocket launcher. Kalina Ann, I believe it's called. And that's the name of her mother, apparently. She etched it into the rocket launcher. Look at how great these environments look. I'll tell you, one thing I don't like about this game that much is the camera. This game has fixed camera angles, but sometimes you have a bit of control over the camera, like using the right stick, you can shift it left and right. But for the most part, the camera holds you back a lot. Like your biggest enemy sometimes is straight up the camera. Sometimes the camera's alright, and sometimes there's an enemy off screen who's about to attack you and you can't really see them because the camera isn't showing them. But for the most part, if an enemy is off cam, they won't try to attack, so it's not too bad. But the camera is a pain to deal with sometimes. But yeah, the enemies are actually threatening in this game, which is nice because they were not in Devil May Cry 2. You could just do this the entire game and you would succeed. But in this game, you can't get away with it. So they actually want you to switch up and do different things. And that's really, really nice. The enemies are actually threatening, and you can't just sit there and mindlessly mash the whole time. You do have to kind of worry about enemy positions, enemy patterns, stuff like that. But this game is very, very cool. The story is actually really interesting, especially Lady. Her sections were really interesting too. There are two playable characters. You get Dante and then Virgil. But Virgil's campaign is more or less exactly the same. The cutscenes are different. Now, the combat is very fascinating in this game because there's different styles. There's Trickster, Swordmaster, Gunslinger. Those are the ones you start off with. Swordmaster prioritizes melee. So if you want to use swords and just go in and slash everything, Swordmaster's probably for you. If you'd prefer to use Dante's guns, you can use Gunslinger. I used it a little bit, but I kind of preferred more evasive fighting styles. Gunslinger is great because it allows you to maximize the efficiency of Dante's guns. But for Trickster, it gives Dante a dash and like an air dash and all that stuff. I found this one to be the most useful because I'm more of a defensive player. I want to be able to dash and move out of the way if I need to. So Trickster was the one I used. You see I got it up to level 3. Royal Guard is a much, much more defensive technique. So if your idea of fighting a bunch of enemies is counter-attacking from a parry or from blocking, that one's your style. But this one's quite difficult to be really, really good at. But it's always a challenge, you know? So then we have Quicksilver and Doppelganger. You get these later on in the game. Quicksilver allows you to slow down time so you can get really big combos, and Doppelganger essentially allows you to create a copy of yourself so you can fight two enemies at the same time. These two are really cool, but they use your Devil Trigger gauge. These don't. But Doppelganger and Quicksilver do. Also, in the customized menu, you have the usual stuff. You can change your equipment. So there's different weapons. You can use like Kalina Ann, I believe that's how it's pronounced. That's the weapon that Lady gives you. You can upgrade the weapons to do more damage and stuff. Spiral is like a sniper rifle, basically. You can swap it out like that. Then you have like your usual shotgun. Artemis is another weapon. I didn't really use it that much. I guess it's like a crossbow. I didn't use it that much. Now, these are your swords you have here. You have Rebellion, Cerberus. You get these from defeating bosses. Agni and Rudra are really cool. Navan is really cool too. It's a guitar that shoots out notes, kind of like Eno. It's pretty cool. Beowulf I didn't really use. But yeah, we're going to use Cerberus just for a demonstration. Of course, you can upgrade stuff here. You can upgrade the weapons, and you can buy red orbs. Now, you can use your red orbs to buy like blue orbs and stuff like that. You can upgrade your health. You can upgrade the weapons and stuff like that. The usual stuff. This is the Ice Guardian's Chamber. This is what leads you to the first Cerberus boss fight. But I'm going to go to a different mission just to kind of show off what this game has. I finished this game on easy, mostly because I was trying to rush through this game, and also because this game's kind of tough, especially for first-time players. This is mission 12. You're on a timer in this mission. Of course, you can change everything before the mission starts, too. You get Devil Trigger in mission 8 in this game. You don't start the game with Devil Trigger. They explain that Arkham and Virgil break a curse. And that curse, or they broke a spell, and that spell gives you Devil Trigger. Of course, you're faster, your attacks do more damage, stuff like that. You essentially become pretty unstoppable with Devil Trigger, you know, if you don't mindlessly mash, I guess. So let's get the old weapon available here. Yeah, look at that. I mean, it's a great weapon. It has short range though, so like, you can't just kind of shoot enemies across the screen with it. This game is very fun though. The combat is actually challenging and engaging, so that's nice. It's not mindless dribble like it was in Devil May Cry 2. I don't mean to compare this to DMC 2, but whenever you have a game that sets the bar so low that a walking simulator would basically be a better game. Not that there's anything bad about walking simulators, but that's basically what DMC2 was. It's just a, you know, a shooting simulator, except nothing engaging happened. Lucia's missions were kind of cool. So once you finish this game, you unlock the ability to play as Virgil, and that seems pretty cool, but you realize that it's basically exactly the same as Dante. You're just playing as Virgil. I thought it would be like Devil May Cry 2, like Lucia's campaign, in which Lucia actually had her own unique section. There was some interlapping between her and Dante, but for the most part, her sections were actually different, and you could experience her perspective. But Virgil's campaign in this game is not canon. You just simply see the story through cutscenes. So the cutscenes are canon. They tell the story of Virgil, his perspective on the story of the game, but the missions are not canon because you just replay the same game again. So that was a little disappointing. But Virgil's fighting style is different, so that's cool. I mean, it's Virgil, he's a different character, right? But I just kind of wish that maybe Virgil's stuff was a little different. Now, they're the only two playable characters in this game. It's just Dante and Virgil. I kind of wish that in Devil May Cry 4, which I know nothing about, I know that Trish shows up in that game, so that's cool. You know, ladies in that one. I just know the characters. I don't know anything about the gameplay. Of course, you know, Dante's in that game too, obviously. That game has multiple playable characters, and I'm assuming it's the same way where you just pick who you want to play as through the campaign. But as I said earlier, my first exposure to Devil May Cry was actually through Marvel vs. Capcom. And if you remember anything about that game, Virgil was incredible in that game from a competitive standpoint. Dante was good too, but Virgil was like top tier. These enemies are really annoying because you have to defeat them pretty quickly. They will multiply if you don't. Like the enemies will split themselves in two, and now suddenly there's two enemies. But you can take care of them pretty quickly. Like they're not threatening that much. So yes, this mission is on a timer. Let's go to a different mission just to get some visual variety here. Let's do we'll do 7. 7 sounds about right. There are some areas in this game you visit multiple times, like this. Obviously, this game takes place in the tower, but you'll be here for the most part. Look at this. Interesting. These big giant set pieces. One thing I don't really like about this game is the camera. Sometimes it's awful, but for the most part, the camera's all right. This game does have a fixed camera, as I mentioned earlier, but apart from that, the fixed camera holds you back somewhat. It's not too bad. Look at this big giant chamber here. You actually had to go through like a few trials to activate this section. This is where you fought the big twins, and you get Agni and Rudra through these guys. But yeah, you're backtracking a lot in this game, which isn't too bad, but let's try out a different fighting style. We'll do Gunslinger, just to experiment with different fighting styles. I just thought Trickster was most useful. I don't have that big air dodge anymore. Instead, I have this. Isn't that interesting? Circle essentially activates the different styles. So that's cool. This game has Bloody Palace as well. Just like Devil May Cry 2. The Bloody Palace is basically just a big giant combat arena. Actually, let's go to the Bloody Palace just to check it out. There's 20 missions in total. Bloody Palace. We'll do this. But yes, this game was very, very cool. And I'm just glad that this game was actually a lot of fun, unlike Devil May Cry 2. This is just like combat trials. Did it switch my fighting style? I guess I have to go back to customize. I still have Beowulf equipped. I didn't think Beowulf was a very useful weapon. Actually, I want to get Cerberus and everything. See, let's go ahead and change that while I'm thinking about it in the customize menu here. So you can change your weapons that you use and everything. We'll keep the weapons the same, like the guns, but we'll do this instead. And I want to change to Gunslinger just to see what it would be like. Because I've used Trickster the whole game. A lot of people said Trickster's the easiest, which, yeah, it probably is. You can also switch weapons on the fly. So see that? And now I'm using Rebellion and now it's Cerberus. So yeah, you can switch on the fly. Actually, move out of the way here. Rebellion is the best for crowd control, I've noticed. Look at that. This is just a big giant combat arena. So the boss fights in this game are pretty challenging too. There's Cerberus, who's like a big three-headed dog. Virgil is obviously a tough boss fight, but it makes sense. But one of the coolest moments in this game is absolutely when you and Virgil both are in Devil Trigger. Virgil is almost invincible when he's in Devil Trigger, like you can barely do any damage to him the whole time. Where'd that guy go? Evisceration. So yeah, I thought that was very cool, because you know Virgil's the big bad guy. You and Virgil actually team up and fight Arkham at one point in the game. You also have to fight Lady. It's basically just hide and seek, but she has a rocket launcher. Isn't that just the epitome of cool? This game was also very comfortable at how goofy Dante is. Like, Dante will just do silly things. Like, the first time you ever meet Lady, she fires a rocket launcher. Her rocket launcher has you, this one. And Dante lands on top of the rocket and just skates around on that rocket. It's really goofy. But they're not afraid to say, hey, Dante doesn't take himself too seriously. He's a silly soul at heart. So that was nice. But I thought it gave Dante a lot of character. He just does really insanely cool things. And he just plays it off like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. But Virgil is very serious. He's much, much more like, yeah, I'm going to get as much power as I can because, you know, I'm a son of Sparta and all that stuff. I thought it was cool. And then, of course, the end credits when you and Lady both had that big giant fight. It was really, really cool. Also, I loved Jester in this game. Jester is silly, and he's the right amount of really, really annoying to the point where you just want to beat that guy up. So yeah, Devil May Cry 3 overall is a very cool game. I really, really enjoyed this one. I'm hoping that the other games will be just as great. I'm sure they will. I don't know anything about DMC4 apart from a few characters that are in the game, but I do know that, you know, Marvel 3 had like Trish in it. I guess she's in 4. So that was cool. So yeah, I give this game probably like an 8 out of 10. I think it's very cool.